Hi, this is Kiki. I am here to present about media representation of adoption. Here's a clip of how the media commonly represents adoption.
Finally, finally, the kindergartner, America Strong. 5-year-old Michael Orlando Clark Jr. smiling right there. He's about to be adopted. And right behind him in this Kent County, Michigan courtroom, Michael's entire kindergarten class holding their hearts from Wealthy Elementary School in East Grand Rapids. Michael invited them all, their smiling faces filling the courtroom, vouching for that new son. His best friend, Stephen.
So the question is, what is this headline trying to do, first and foremost, and what is missing from the national headline? Do we know any information about why Michael is being adopted? Do we know any information about the biological family? Michael was adopted in Grand Rapids during a specific day held here for adoptions. And with media representation, adoption is often shown as a heartfelt and loving event. And while these things can be true, this is only a small part of what adoption looks like in reality.
Waving those hearts, it was time.
It is ordered, Michael, that you're forever mom and dad will be David Andrew Eaton and Andrea Louise Melvin.
Whole courtroom ready.
One, two, three.
The media does very little to convey the political complexities that come with family separation and the reasons behind it, and the trauma that is involved with all. Part of this problem perpetuates white savior complex or just heroic savior complex in general. With adoption, the media centers around adoptive parents, and it creates a story in which they can be heroes and saviors. This creates quite a misconception of what adoption is and glorifies it. White saviorism is when a white person feels the need to rescue someone of a different person of color, into what they'd consider a better life, and this whole perception is part of white supremacy and a perceived superiority. Adoption is the separation of a child from their biological family through lawyers and money, and then the child is placed into a family considered better suited. The triad is between a struggling biological family, adoptive family, and a child who is typically somehow commodified and traumatized during the experience. Here are some examples of celebrity adoptions. And with that, there are many puff pieces about the kids, glossing over some harsh details and realities. And oftentimes this media portrayal, it simplifies the issues and it makes people just consider that these children are very lucky, and it glosses over larger narratives. In media, biological families are negatively depicted or not depicted at all. It's a rare occurrence where a media story about adoption incorporates the information about the biological family. Oftentimes, portrayals involve harmful stereotypes. In this article, Birth Parents Portrayals in Children's Adoption and Literature, there's almost no depiction of Latino or Black birth parents whatsoever. And comparatively, Asian and white birth parents were not absent from books. And then the literature analyzed in the article spells out that the content is centered for adoptive parents. There's very little information about why biological families choose to relinquish, or any reason or understanding about this difficult choice. So it creates a problem for the adoptee reading this literature because it doesn't face the facts and it overshadows any sort of real understanding taking place in interpretation of their adoption. One instance where the media did show the biological family is the famous public case of baby Veronica. The biological father was at war for the country and returned to find out his daughter had been adopted without his knowledge. He fought to get her back. He had her back for 2 years. And during that entire time, the adoptive family court battled him to get her back, which they ultimately did. And behind the scenes, the question remains, who gets to determine what's best for the baby, and how is this shaped by the media and cultural opinion? This was a huge deal also because it showcased the erasure of Native American culture in America. And there are serious complexities within all adoption and family separation. The article Saving Innocence shows how family policy and media portrayals manipulate public knowledge, and in the background, it creates termination of specific groups of marginalized people, especially BIPOC women. Black women are disproportionately die during childbirth, and often adoption is portrayed as a solution for abortion. So, adoption is an outcome of deeper systemic problems around classism, racism, and sexism and their intersections. And I have a quote from Sweeney here. Media portrayal is based on harmful stereotypes of the biological family and excludes both biological family and adoptee perspectives. The act is then glorified by the business of adoption as an heroic act of saviorism, furnished by media and $1 billion business of adoption as the best choice for baby, creating a false narrative and ignoring the root issues of why it exists in the first place. Media portrayals of such a highly of such high are media portrayals of such are highly complicated issues and are important because the news establishes a key basis for public meaning and ultimately popular belief. Adoption does create lifelong grief, and it is a form of trauma. Adoptees have an increased in depression, ADHD, and other mental health issues, and health.gov has reported that adoptees are 4 times more likely to commit suicide or attempt suicide compared with non-adoptees. It's shaped by the oppressive systems. We have an example of Colin Kaepernick recently calling out his white adoptive parents over their fussing about his hair, and they didn't want him to have black hairstyles. This is very common. Then we have oppression where we have wealthy white parents who come in and finagle their way into systems and essentially perpetuate stealing from indigenous families of other countries and here in the United States. Adoption is seriously complex. We need to shift our focus towards the fact that this is so. Another example is Angelina Jolie. Her friend, quote, he's listed as the father on her children from Cambodia's papers so that she could adopt them faster. And they found out later that she is, or that the families or the children were not even orphans, that their families were still alive. So news media needs to shift to full human perspectives and stop making puff pieces and glorifying adoption. It really needs to go into the fact that adoption is complicated and perpetuating white supremacy. And thank you for attending.